We're still in the book of First Peter chapter 3. And we've been talking about the wives, how they're supposed to love their husbands. I know it's been a great change, hasn't it, husbands? You didn't realize life could get so good with just a few words, right? Not that it was bad, but it's gotten so much better, I know. Better and better each day. And so today, husbands, it's your turn. We get to share with you how to solve all your problems, how to make the world exactly how you want it to be. We're in First Peter chapter 3. We're going to be looking at verse 7 today. And it reads, "You husbands, in the same way, live with your wives in an understanding way as with someone weaker, since she is a woman, and show her honor as a fellow heir of the grace of life, so that your prayers will not be hindered." Let the church say amen. So husbands, First Peter chapter 3, verse 7 says, in the same way. What way is that? As we talked about earlier, it's in the context of Jesus being our example, how Jesus suffered unfairly, went through all the things that he went through, but never, ever fought for his rights. During a time where God was telling the children of God to submit to the ruling authorities. During a time when Nero was burning Christians alive and having all sorts of sports with them. But during such a time like that, he said, submit. Because you're not submitting to these people, you're submitting to God. God wants you to see him at work in these places. And this work, it says, consider her as the weaker vessel with honor as fellow heirs of the gift, the gracious gift of life, so that your prayers will not be hindered. I find this be one of the major problems with most marriages, prayers not being answered. And God gives us an answer to why that happens. But do we or are we able to put the dots together if we're studying the Word of God to know where they should connect at? It emphasizes the importance of mutual respect and consideration within the marriage relationship. Mutual respect. And some of the key components we need to understand its deeper meaning. The one, it says, husband in the same way. Like I said, it introduces us to the introduction. God expects the same level of love from all of us. It's not debited out as you see fit. And it's what it's trying to tell us, that the principles of humility, understanding, and respect are applicable to the husbands as well as it is to the wives. Mutual respect, humility, understanding, which is the biggest problem. We know the word, but do we understand it in its fullness? Do we really understand what it knows to be an example? Keeping in mind that Christ is our example. Ephesians 1:25-33 says, husbands are instructed on how to live with their wives. It says, husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. That's one of the number one problems with husbands. They're not willing to give themselves up for the wife, like Christ did for the church. Sometimes we spend too much time trying to pinpoint our wives' problems. We come up with phrases like, well, that's just how they are. You know how they are. When you say that, that's saying you don't know yourself. You don't understand your responsibility to your wife. So we should strive to nurture and cherish our wives as we would our own bodies. When we love our wives well, we reflect Christ's love for the church. Christ's love for the church. Even though he was in the image of God, like God. Even though, husbands, you are the glory of God. Don't consider that something to try to hold on to try to prove who you are. Power doesn't have to be proven. It has to be lived and respected. So often, because of the enemy's attack on our identity, men, we are constantly trying to prove we men. You don't have to prove that you're a man. Just be a man. Be the man that God created you to be. He's giving you clear instructions on what that looks like. And I understand that's a weighty challenge. It's easier said than done. Furthermore, it says Christ's love was selfless and sacrificial. And we are called to love our wives in that same manner. Sacrificial and selfless. Most husbands in marriages are constantly demanding. Feel that they have this undated right to have what they want. And you can if you know how to have it. But that's not the way. We're constantly throwing out rules and responsibilities, and that doesn't get anything done with anybody. The law only makes you rebel. The most powerful tool we have is love. Christ sacrificed himself. He gave up his glory, as the song says, so we could have our own story. So we could be able to tell the world what it's like to be transformed, to be able to live like God. This is especially challenging because we have been programmed to believe it's my way or the highway, or just do it because I said so. Usually, that's because you don't even know why yourself. When you understand who you are, when you understand your purpose, when you understand your role, you know how to live it without trying to dictate it and make it happen. Christ inspires us to want to be who God called us to be. When we look at the love he showed for us. So, furthermore, one thing you have to understand is that husbands, we are required to build our wives up. Just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself up for her so that he might sanctify her. One of your responsibilities to your wife, husband, you have to sanctify her. What does that mean? You have to set her apart. How do we do it? Cleansing her by the washing of the water with the word. So that means master builders, the glory of God. You need to know everything in the instruction book on how to be who God created you to be. But unfortunately, it's the book we read the less. You are responsible. If you don't like the wife you have, I would ask you a question. Why haven't you fixed it? Why haven't you cleaned her up? Why haven't you washed her with the word? Because when you talk about your wife, you're talking about your poor ability as her leader, as her husband, as her guide. After all, God says she's supposed to learn from you. What do you know? What do you know about your role as a husband? I bet you know your role about the things you like, the cars you like, the games you like, the teams you like, the things you like to do. I bet you put a lot of study in that to know it, to be intelligible about it when conversations come up, to be able to give the right information. How much time do you really put in being a husband? You think it's just going to work, bringing the money home? You can train a monkey to do that. But does it build what you're supposed to be building? Loving your wife as Christ loved the church. Look how he does you. Look at what he's doing for us to become who he's called us to be, so that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of the water with the word. Why? Why does he do that? So that he may present to himself the church in all her glory. You're supposed to be presenting your wife to yourself in all her glory. You're waiting for her to present herself to you, aren't you? And you're telling God to do it, right? And God is like, that's your job. That's your responsibility. So whenever you find yourself talking about your wife, you're talking about yourself. You're talking about your poor skills as building her up. You don't like the wife you have? Build the one you want. It's as simple as that. But are you willing to put in the work? Are you willing to make the sacrifices? Are you willing to learn? Let her tell you who she is. Let her tell you what she's about. Let her tell you what she likes. And trust that she knows herself well enough to let you know. But is that what we do? So husbands ought to love their own wives as their own bodies. We might want to put a check beside that one because husbands do a poor job of loving themselves, taking care of themselves, doing what's best for themselves. Husbands do what they like and what makes them feel good. They don't do what's best for them. So how can you love someone else when you're not even loving yourself? How can you love your wife when you're not loving yourself? The word tells us it's not possible because that's supposed to be your model. So when you look at yourself, husbands, on a scale of 1 to 10, you have to ask yourself, on a scale of 1 to 10, how am I loving myself? Are you your number one priority as far as what God has given you to present it back to him in the condition in which he gave it? That's your own body. He who loves his own wife loves himself. So hear what he just said. The attitude that you have towards your wife, husbands, it's the same attitude you have to yourself, whether subconsciously or consciously. That's the spiritual result of it. The same attitude you have towards your wife is the same attitude you have toward yourself because you all are supposed to be one. The keys coming together and meshing as one. Unfortunately, we don't even know how to fix ourselves. We don't know what's best for ourselves. We don't take the time to know ourselves because we are on this mission for things and stuff, not realizing that at the end of the day, none of that's going to matter. It says, just as Christ also does the church, because we are parts of his body. Your wife is a part of you. She's that part of you that God took away from man. So when you have your wife, you have to understand that is a part of you that's been long lost. You should be excited to really get to know that other part of you that you don't know. You should be constantly seeking to know it better, to know more about it. Not try to make it like the half that was already there. That completes you. It adds on to you. And unfortunately, the enemy has trained us to be skeptical of things that are not like us. We have a tendency to want to try to make it like what we want it to be. Oh, why you have to do it like that? That's the way they do it. Why they talk like that? That's how they talk. How do you want them to talk? You want them to do it like you do it. Well, if you were sufficient, you wouldn't have needed a wife. You wouldn't have. He said it's not good for you to be by yourself. And you were whole then. You had everything in you. Now you have or whatever. You got part of you missing and you think it's better now to be by yourself. You can be led to make yourself think that's good. And you throw out stuff like, if you want to leave, just make sure you're sure. Because you think you're ready to be by yourself again. But you're not created that way. You did not make this, God did. And he's given us clear instructions on how we should work to make it operate at its fullest potential, the best version of yourself. He says, therefore, since the husband and wife are one flesh, husband, you must give yourself up for your wives. You do this to sanctify her and cleanse her by washing the water with the word. Do we really give ourselves up, or are we really trying to make her be like we want her to be? Really ask yourself, how do you really look at your wife, the way she does things, the way she talks? She might get a little too busy or something in your mind. She might put too many words in it in your mind. She might make it hard for you. No, she's trying to help you change and grow. But we try to fit everything into our little small world, and we try to figure out why we're not really happy. Why this thing is so much work. Why do we have to go through this? Well, he said, every time I turn around, here she go again. Well, what else would she be doing? What is she supposed to be doing? Sitting off quietly, saying, yes, sir, no, sir. You ready? Whatever you want, I'm at your beck and command. Is that what she's supposed to be doing? That's what you like, right? Because you don't have to work to know how you're supposed to be helping her get better, right? Just pretend you good. Just act happy. Just smile. I'll be okay. Let's not talk about what I did wrong yesterday. You're in the past. Well, your past is what made your today. And if you don't like your today, you need to look at your past to see what happened to get you here. You didn't just fall out the sky today. It's been stuff that you've been doing. And after a while, that takes its toll. Doesn't following Jesus take its toll? Some days you just feel like giving up. Then Jesus do what he do. He give you a shot of faith, a shot of unexpected love, a shot of unexpected concern, and he'll just come along and give you that thing you need to see, that thing you need to spiritualize. Oh, thank you. Now I know you're with me. It makes me want to keep moving, because I can be assured that he hasn't left me. And unfortunately, husbands and how we live with our wives, they leave us even though they're still there. They leave us although they're still there. And you know what that's, well, you don't know what that's like, but there are those could tell you what that's like. To be there but not be there. Where you have to always put in a order for what you want for the week. Or make a request, usually to get turned down. Why? Because we make it overbearing. We don't give them what they need. They need to know. You call it nosy. They just need to know. Maybe that's the part God didn't give them, the part to know. So you're supposed to have it. What are you doing to know? What are you doing to be who you're supposed to be? Because you're supposed to be the image of God. So husband, this is the attitude you must develop in your marriage if you want your marriage to represent the relationship between Christ and the church. You must be willing to build her. Look at her. What type of wife do you want? Now make sure you're getting your guide from the Bible, not the world's model, okay? Make sure you're getting it from the right place, because you'll be trying to make something that ain't possible. It's sadly to say, that's what most husbands do. I won't say most. Most that I know, they want this, they have this ideal picture of what their wife's supposed to be like. Filling their fantasies of what the world has told them life is supposed to be. So you have to look at the book to see what type of wife she's supposed to be. So that when you go to work, you have the right blueprint to work with. And that biggest work is going to be working on you. See how Jesus cried in the garden? He didn't want to do it, but he thought about it. He loved us, the church. Sweat and blood. It gets tough sometimes in a marriage like that, right? Sometimes you feel like you can just sweat blood. It's so tense, so challenging. But at the end, you have to say, not my will, God. Not my will here. What is going to be best for my wife? If she's the weaker vessel, you keep trying to tell her she's the weaker vessel, right? Live with her like she won. Make her stronger. Make her better. A lot of work in it. You got to study. You got to change. You got to grow. You got to stop complaining. And consider it a challenge. He's giving you this raw material. You go buy an old raggedy car. Well, I don't think some of that, but you got to buy old things. And you have this vision of what it should look like. Regardless of how much it costs, you just patiently, little piece at a time. Little piece at a time. You go buy it. You go get it. Find somebody to go ahead and put it together for you if you can't do it yourself. But it's a long, drawn-out process. But you're willing to go through that process. To go through the changes where your wife is saying you spending all that money on that. That's all part of the process. And she should be looking at you, oh, I love you so much. You're spending all of this effort and energy on me. Oh my God. Oh my God. What do you need? That's what she should be saying. Wow, you spending all of this love energy on me. You're looking past all of those bent fenders and broken headlights. You're looking past all that, the torn upholstery. Because when you see it, you don't see that. You see it in its finished product. And then you sometimes go find pictures that tell you what it's going to look like when you finish. So you go to the instruction book. It'll tell you what she's going to look like when you finish. And at the end of the day, you can say, pretty work. That was some pretty work. And you feel good about it because you know you put the effort and the energy in. It wasn't given to you. That's what God requires of us. Each husband is to love his own wife. His own wife, not the job wife, not the work wife, not the club wife. None of those. Because you have those when you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing at home to get what you're supposed to be getting from home. It's on us. How bad do you want it perfect? How much work you willing to put in? Or you want to order one? Raw material too. It's going to have to be worked on. Whatever you believe is wrong with your marriage or wife, you are obligated to fix it, being you are the very glory of God. So how do we do such a thing? Study the book. God said he created the heavens, he created the universe through knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. Not Mary's 5 ways to have a perfect wife or a perfect marriage. That only lasts for so long because it's still carnal. This is a spiritual walk. Marriage was established by God. He has a formula for it. But when you hear such a thing, what does your mind tell you? You don't know the peace he gave me. You don't know the peace he gave her. That's why we have a problem. Because if you understood who you were, you would know what you're supposed to be doing. Aren't you always trying to fix up stuff like you like it anyway? Go outside and look around and sound like this, that. You walk through the house and sound like this and that. We do it. We're constantly trying to improve something about ourselves. We even look in the mirror sometimes, right? We look at ourselves like, hey, I think I might make a little change. I think I'd like me like this. You ever looked at your wife like that? Wow, man, what if she was free right there? How would she look free right there? Wow. You won't know until you free her. That sounds like a lot of work, don't it, guys? Doesn't it? Or have you found it to be a lot of work already? You just weren't using the right instructions. You weren't using the right book. Each husband is to love his own wife. And I guess the question is, like I said, is, husband, do you love yourself or do you even know how? Do you really know how to love yourself? What areas would you look at? Your health, your finances, your relationships, your purpose, your mental health, spiritual health. How are you in those areas? These are the things that pertain to life that everyone has to give an account for. These are the places you need to make sure you're operating at your highest level. Can't stay up all night, run all day, eat whatever you want when you want. You have to decide, what does it take to take care of myself, to operate at optimal level all the time? Because you're a spirit being, you have to keep this vehicle in shape to make sure it can keep up with you. Spirit is willing. Flesh breaks down, get flat tires, motor gets shot, go to smoking, knocking, because you won't take care of it. But you want to push it every day. Keep pushing it, keep pushing it. All the warning lights have gone off and said, look, you need to be checking something. But you drive a few days and ask, will driving with this light on cause me a serious problem? And you and I both know, if it ain't gonna cause no serious problem, you will deal with that light being on, especially if it costs you a little extra money, right? So in your body, caution lights are constantly going off. Hey, you need to check this, you need to check that. And sometime it'll go off and you think you're good. Sometimes they stay off for a long time, don't they? Sometimes the season might change and it'll come back on, oh, that's just the weather. We're going to be good. It's going to go back off. That's what you're hoping for. We could just solve the problem. Because the longer you do it that way, the worse it gets over time. And as the worse it gets, the harder it becomes to try to get it fixed. Second thing is, treat your wives with consideration. It highlights the need for husbands to be thoughtful and mindful of our wives, their needs, and their feelings. You remember when you first met them? Oh, they were the apple of your eye. You ride hours. You go conquer the world just to show them that you care about them because you want them. Then you get them. Then you forget all that stuff that you did to get them. Now you tell them to operate on memory. You know I love you. Why you think I get up and go to work every day? Because you live in this house like me. You don't want to be outside. You ain't just going for me. You like to eat good food just like I do. Don't be trying to throw it on me like that's how you love me. You gonna do that if I'm not here. If you can handle it, if you don't fall apart. But are we really conscious of it, or we just get annoyed with it? It does annoy you when you're really trying to be just you, right? Sometimes just how they say something. There she go again. Why she say that? Why you say that, babe? What do you mean why I say that? You shouldn't have said it like that. Well, how was I supposed to say it? Like me. She the part you don't have. You need to learn how to say it like that sometimes too. You are responsible for the condition of your wife. Don't say you got the wrong one. You got to know how to fix that one as well. But what do we really do? Are we really interested in doing what God has called us to do? He used the word consider. And what it means, it implies a thoughtful approach to understanding and supporting. Do you understand your wife, or do you support her in what she believes? Now, you have to put this into perspective that you've given her your vision of what life is supposed to be about. You have told her who you are. And in the marriage, when you met, there was supposed to have been a mutual agreement like, I can ride with that. We didn't have no kind of plan. You didn't meet your wife and said, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is how I do things. You just got together just knowing it was going to be perfect, right? Only to discover that it was actually true. It was actually a match made in heaven. You couldn't have ordered it no better, right? But then time moves on, and we wonder what happened. It's not what happened, it's what didn't happen. What didn't happen? These things didn't happen. Understanding and supporting. Recognizing her unique qualities and challenges that she brings. You have to recognize how she completes you, how she makes you a better person. Not because she wants you to be the husband you want her to be. She was sold into the man you said you were. And your walk has to live up to who you said you were. I was reading a story about a husband and a wife, and the husband, this was real. A husband was telling me how he had come to the place when he met his wife, he promised her a house, he's promised her this, he's promised her this, and he realized he hadn't come through. He realized he hadn't come through, not realizing that he was on the verge of losing her, even though he thought things were well. Your word is your strength, it's your power. It should be your bond. Our word should have value. People should know if I say this, if he said it, he's going to do it. Not if you continually said you're going to do something and don't do it. The trust is lost. The faith is lost. The sense of security and safeness is lost. So your wives feel that they have to take it upon themselves to make sure they're going to be all right. And most of the time to make sure the family's going to be all right. Because we won't do our part to learn, to know, to grow, to be who God has called us to be. Being a man, the head, comes with great responsibility. No one is coming to rescue you. You're it. You're it. You are the solution to your family's problems. No one else. But have you come through? Have you become that husband you need to be so that you can hear from God? So God can talk to you and tell you what you need to do. The woman is unique. She's different. She can't be like you. God never intended her to be like you. He intended you all to come together and become this one finished product where you become complete now. And so many times, husbands, we try to make it look like we are the end within the means. We have it all. And we don't take advantage of the tools and the resources that God puts in our lives to be the best version of ourselves, to bring out the best of those that God puts in our world. Because we don't learn how to nurture and to build a compassionate environment. And this is important for your wife's spiritual growth and development. You have to build that environment. She has to feel safe in it. She has to feel secure. She has to feel valued, needed, just like you do. But what do? We're constantly belittling and putting down because we're constantly trying to pull out a flaw. If you saw a problem on your car, your vehicle, do you walk up to your vehicle and say, why are you not running right? You shouldn't be running like that. You figure out what's wrong with it, right? And then you figure out what you need to do to fix it. Your wife is the same way. So this is what I want you guys to do. Don't ever complain about your wife again. When you see things are not going like they're supposed to be, just remind yourself, I'm doing a lousy job as a husband. Because if I'm doing my job, there should be nothing to complain about. When you have a home, you know that responsibilities come with home ownership, right? And you know that home ownership comes with great expense, right? But what you rather have, own one or rent one? Even though renting is cheaper, right? On the long run. But what do? We might have to put a furnace in. And if you ain't got furnace money, what you start doing? You start trying to figure out how to save some furnace money for the future, right? So when you see your wife, she's got issues. You might say, man, that's a big ticket item right there. Where she at right now, that's a big ticket. So what you gonna do? You try to find big ticket money, big ticket support, giving up yourself. Because that's what it's gonna take to make it better. And aren't you excited when you put that furnace in? Especially when it's an upgrade and there's warm on both ends of the house. You don't even mind how much you pay for it then, right? You get like comfy all through the house. That's the same way it is with your wife. Don't you want it comfortable in every room? Don't you want everything to be just nice and cozy, toasty? You don't want no drafts coming through the windows, air coming underneath the door. You got to walk around in blankets to stay comfortable. You don't want that. You want to be able to just relax and be free. Well, you have to make sure you maintain your wife, build her up. And the greatest approach is preventive medicine. Don't let her break down and try to fix her. That's a lot more work, a lot more expense. And God's going to hold you accountable for not being a good steward and allowing it to break down. He might let it stay broke down for a long period of time. So you realize if I ever get this fixed, we will never be in this position again because I've learned what it takes. He says, also live with her as a weaker vessel. And in 1 Peter 3:7 comes from the Greek word asthenio, which means weak or feeble. Through this study, I found men really working hard to not let the scriptures say what they say. They had all these explanations of why it doesn't mean that. That's what it means. The original language says feeble, weak. Vessel is the word he used. She's the weaker vessel, which refers to a container or implement of some kind, often implying that it holds value or serves a purpose. The wife is a weaker vessel that holds value and serves a severe purpose for the marriage. This is what you have to understand. The woman in her human makeup, mind, body, and soul, is considered by God to be weaker. When it comes to her will, intellect, and ability to reason in spirit and the truth, the woman is considered weaker due to her emotional state. In the context of the verse, weaker vessel means woman, the female, which is telling us husbands to treat our wives with care and gentleness. It's not talking about inferiority or lack of worth, but it highlights the differences in our physical and emotional strength. In our physical and emotional strength, there is a difference between the male and the female is considered weaker in that state. That's why he's encouraging us to be protective, nurturing, and respectful, showing true love for our wives, acknowledging their sensitivity and the unique challenges they may face. By recognizing your wives as the weaker vessels, husband, we are reminded to embody compassion and understanding, ensuring that our love and treatment of our wives promote a loving and healthy relationship. Does the way you treat your wife promote a loving and healthy relationship? Does the way you treat your wife represent a healthy and loving relationship? And what this is actually telling us when it comes to the woman is telling us that there's a spiritual and emotional inequality between the husband and the wives. And this is because God took that part from the man because he wanted to bring back together a complete man to carry out God's will. Even though we are different, we have to understand that we both are cherished in God's eyesight and co-heirs with the promise of God, of the inheritance. As spirit beings living a self-controlled life by the power of the Holy Spirit, characterized by righteous and abundant living, that's what makes us co-heirs with Christ. Because we are spirit beings, but as human beings, we have different purposes. Different purposes. It doesn't make you weaker or stronger. You just have a different purpose. Acknowledge the difference between our physical and emotional strength between men and women, suggesting that as husbands, we should treat our wives with care and sensitivity. Essentially, a woman was created from man's DNA. What makes her weaker? The woman was created from the man's DNA. Adam was dirt. God took dirt, breathed into the dirt, and the man became a living soul, a living being. There will never be another one like Adam. by being taken from Adam's DNA, which serves as the blueprint for life, defining the characteristics and functions of all human beings. God put in Adam everything humanity would need to carry out his will. When you study the male and the female, they talk about the chromosomes. Y chromosome, X chromosome. The man has the chromosomes that can dictate whether it's going to be a male or a female. All of that was in him. All of that was in the man. Life for human beings is in the DNA of the male through Adam. So when Eve came along, she was totally Adam's DNA. Life, what she was going to be, how things were going to be, was all dictated through Adam's DNA. Adam's DNA was corrected by God when God breathed into him and his soul became alive. It highlights the dynamic where the woman reflects the man's glory. Consequently, God instructs women to learn of him from their husbands, underscoring his design order. That's why they're called to learn from you, husbands. Because of that direct connection from God, that's why God says you're his glory. You represent his glory. The woman represents your glory, the man's glory, because her life is in his DNA. The scripture encourages a respectful and nurturing approach because husbands and wives are co-heirs of God's grace. Ultimately, it calls for the husbands to treat their wives with honor, ensuring a healthy and harmonious relationship that positively influences their spiritual lives. How you treat your wife is a reflection of both of your spiritual lives as it pertains to what God says it's supposed to be. You look at the relationship, you can tell exactly where the man is with God and where their relationship is in their marriage. It's a reflection of what you're sowing to, who you are and what you're being. When it comes to sharing the blessings, the husband and the wife are seen as equal in God's eyes. How do we share the blessings? Through walking in obedience to God. How do we walk in obedience to God? As spiritual beings, serving God in spirit and in truth. That's how we walk in obedience to God. That's what the blessings of God are all tied to. And also honor them as fellow heirs. Emphasize the equality in the marriage relationship when it comes to the inheritance, as it acknowledges that both husband and wives are children of God's grace. It doesn't relinquish who you are as far as God's promises. This is all about different purposes in which God has put us together, because it all requires all of us to be humble and submissive to God because of what we have to deal with to overcome our human nature to deal in this marriage relationship. And it's all about submissiveness, giving up yourself. Think about it. If wives gave themselves up to make sure their husband was all right, and the husband gave themselves up to make sure the wife is all right, guess what we have? We have a three-way combo, three-pack. Now, God gets to look out for everybody. Unfortunately, in most marriages, it ends up the husband is looking out for himself and the wife is looking out for herself. And that's where the conflict comes in. There's a fight for who knows what should be the best thing to do. And neither one of you know. But when you submit and come together with God, he gives the answer on what should be done and what should not be done. It underlines the spiritual equality between genders and the equal standing as spirit beings who have faith in God. And that's what this is all about, faith in God's way. See what God will do when you stop fighting for your way. See what he will do. If you submissive and do things the way he says, it doesn't matter what anyone else does. We're in a covenant relationship with God. And he requires us to keep our covenants that we make with him. Husbands, you are called to honor your wives, recognizing their shared inheritance of God's blessings and grace, which brings a mutual respect and value to the relationship. We must keep in mind that this is all against the backdrop of Jesus being our example for sacrifice and suffering for obedience to God. That's why the scripture says, so that your prayers will not be hindered. That's why in a lot of marriages you find that things that they're trying to accomplish doesn't materialize because the prayers are being hindered because the marriage is not being glorified and honored like God says it should be. There's not the respect that's due to both parties in the relationship. And we lose trust in one another. And everybody starts doing their own thing. Enough to just coexist, but not really live the life that represents Christ in the church. It stresses that husbands treat their wives, the way you treat your wives can directly affect their spiritual life and their relationship with God. Just like we have going on in our society today, the people that want to stand behind this pulpit. There are those that believe that because men are not doing what they're supposed to do in their minds, that they have the authority and it should be there. You're not going to make God's word change, no matter how many reasons you use it. And God is only going to honor his word. Certain things God intended for certain people to do. Doesn't matter what society says. We're not here to line up with society. We're here to maintain the way of God, not just maintain it, but build that community that looks like God. People say we are a cult because we act like a family. We do things together. You hang out together. You always choose each other over everyone else. What did Jesus say when his parents were looking for him? Who thought he was crazy? Some think we are crazy. Even though they're part of our families, they want us to believe we're crazy. They talk to our people like we crazy. And they talk to our people like they crazy. And they don't know why we don't like being in that environment. You undermine everything that I do, and you openly try to make everyone else undermine it in front of me with people, and I'm supposed to love that environment? I don't think so. There may have been a time I put up with it, but, eventually something has to change. I don't attack your stuff, even though I could take the book and just tear it all to pieces. That's between you and God. That's his thing. He's letting it happen. If you want me in your life, show me that you value me. Show me that you appreciate me. Build me up, edify me. We're supposed to be building a relationship. You just can't tear relationships down and expect them to be good. I mean, you've spoken what your words have said. You need me to change to be like you. I was like you. I had to change from being like you. Once I changed, I became better. I feel better. My people are better. My life is better. You want me to give this up to go into the misery that you try to invite me into right now? I'm sorry. I'm full. That don't work for me. Misery loves company, they say. I don't love misery. I try to separate myself as God told me to so I can enjoy the good life that I have. Things going as God says they should go. The Greek word for hinder is often translated ipoto, which suggests the idea of cutting off or obstructing a path. When you're not treating your spouse the way you're supposed to, husbands, you are hindering your prayers. You cut it off. No matter what you think, no matter what you believe, that's your number one priority. Because what does God say? How can you lead the church if you can't lead your own family? Everybody's supposed to be submissive to God. If you're creating that environment that's conducive to spiritual growth and development, that's conducive to love and respect, you can't be trying to humiliate your people around people because they're not doing what you want them to do. Or throwing little hints. Make one the bad guy. You're going to sick one on the other one. You go get them. That's not of God. Or you constantly trying to let other people see the shortcomings of your spouse. That definitely hinders your prayers because it's not the respect and love that God calls for. It implies that there are actions or attitudes that can obstruct connection between a person and their divine connection with God. From a deeper perspective, it emphasizes the importance of harmony and understanding in relationships, particularly in the context of marriage, as God established it to be. It indicates that our spirit life, symbolized by prayer, because that's how you talk to God about your problem, can be affected by the way we interact with our wives. It's a reminder that how we treat our wives is intertwined with our spiritual lives. You might want to check and then start consciously connecting the dots. God says we reap what we sow. You sow toward your human nature, you're going to reap destruction in all the main areas of life that pertain to every human being. Connect the dots. There is an answer. We've been called to embrace a loving and respectful attitude, husbands, toward our wives, recognizing their value and treating them with care. That's your responsibility. Recognizing their value. What do we recognize, though? What we call not value. What doesn't go with how we do things. That's what we recognize, and that's what we talk about. We're supposed to be recognizing the value that they bring to the table. And now we have the responsibility. Now, how can I enhance that? How can I make it stronger? How can I make her the best version of herself? Because she's yours, don't you want the best version of her? Well, it's up to you to fix it. Talking about it is not going to fix it. Getting frustrated about it is not going to fix it. Shutting down, not talking, is not going to fix it. It's engaging effectively through unconditional love with a purpose. You have to present it to yourself without spot or wrinkle. You do that with everything else you got. You try to fix it up. You find the little flaws. You try to fix it. The greatest responsibility you have is your spouse. You got to wash her up and clean her up. Not keep talking about how dirty she is, or how she's not this or that. That's like a man on his job talking about how poor things are. The production is down. We ain't doing this and we ain't doing that. Well, somebody's responsible for that. The person in charge. And obviously, he's showing he's not able to do his job. How does your love for your wife reflect Christ's love for the church? That's what I want to leave with you, husbands. How does your love for your wife reflect Christ's love for the church? Should be selfless, sacrificial, and unconditional, as Christ's love is. Husband, love your wives as Christ loved the church. I want you to really meditate on what I've shared with you today. We talked about the wives. We talked about the husbands from the Word of God. Husbands, you have a tremendous responsibility for the condition of the world. And it starts with your family. The smallest denominator of the community, of society. If your wife got a problem, you got bigger problems because you don't know what you're doing. And obviously, you're not trying to learn how to do your job. Don't find the world's 9 whatever love language. They're talking from a romantic state. We're talking about a spiritual state. God is the one that created it. He's the only one that has an answer that will make it what it's supposed to be. But you're going to have to go in there and find it. You're going to have to study to show yourself approved, not ashamed, worthy. If you ain't willing to learn, it's about as good as it's going to get for you. So buckle in, saddle on tight, and just learn how to ride that horse so you don't fall off. If you're not willing to make the changes to create the wife that you say you want, that God said you should have. But he's put it totally in your hands to determine what type of wife you'll have. Meditate on what I shared with you. Really think about it. Not just think about it. Ask yourself, am I going to put the work in? Am I going to put the work in to make my wife and my family a model of the kingdom of heaven? It's on you. The head, the boss, the man, the one in charge. That's right. This is why 99% fail at the job, because they're not willing to put the time in to change themselves and sacrifice themselves and realize the responsibility they have to their wives. Let's get a Lord a hand praise. Think about it. Let's hear some music. Then we'll come up and close.